Hey, so this video is going to be all about building new beds, how we do it with our chickens, and how we do it no-till. There are lots of ways, different ways to do this. This is just what seems to work for us, and we like to use chickens as much as possible. Besides them giving us eggs, they can do a lot of other things for us here. This over here is the newest field block here, and this one over here will be adding 6 more beds, and that'll be our final push for the expansion for this spring. So you can see here the chickens have been for a couple weeks. They've really worked the ground. They've eaten most of the grass and vegetation that's there. There's a little bit more that I'm gonna have to take care of, but I'm gonna start moving some soil in here and have the chickens spread it out for me before we start building beds. Alright, so I wish I had a fancy drone, but what I'm doing right now is I'm staying on top of a huge pile of wood chips so I can take this shot for you guys. Yeah, so this is where I'm filming from. Just to show you an overview of how the farm's set up right now and sort of the expansion here. Our original beds were over in this area, and this over here is the newest field block. There's 6 new beds here, and what we're talking about today is going to be this area over here where the chickens are. You can see it's pretty well cleared off and ready to go, and behind them there's a darker area in the shot here. Those are where our beds were before, and we had to shift everything down by 25 feet because this big oak tree out here was creating quite a bit of interference with the growth. So we're going to use that soil to start building to spread it out over the area there, to give it some more compost, some more organics, and just give it a more solid base. We did that over on this field block before we started laying down our compost for our beds. So I'm going to start spreading soil over this area half at a time. So I'll move the fence over half, put a bunch of soil in, let the chickens on it, do the other side. So there's just a tiny bit of grass left. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hit it with the flame weeder. I don't have one of those fancy ones with the multiple torches, but I got this pretty cheap. I got this from Northern Tools and hooks up to a regular propane tank. I use it on my beds. Maybe at some point I can upgrade to a bigger one, but for now this is working fine and definitely budget conscious. So I'm just going to hit these up, and then we'll move the soil over here. And there you go. Flame weeding's all done. Let's bring in the old soil. So I'm standing in this area here. This is half a bed width, 25 feet, that we're taking this soil and moving it to build some other beds as we shift the beds down. So I've already taken out most of this, or just over half I should say, to build some of the other new beds. This is a mixture of our old soil in our beds, and there's some wood chips in here. They're really broken down at this point. So I'm just going to put all this over where the chickens were, and they'll spread that out for me, and then work it for a couple days, and then, or however much time I decide to give it, I'm not sure yet, and then we'll put compost on there and start building beds. So got a lot of work ahead of me. All right, so moved about half the remaining soil to half the area here where the chickens are, and you can see how quickly they get to work here. I really love using chickens for other stuff. What they're doing now is they're scratching, they're eating stuff, they're breaking it down a little more, and the biggest thing is they're going to spread it out pretty evenly for me. I'll have to come back in with a rake to finish it off, but they'll do a pretty awesome job. I was hoping to get a little more soil out of that area, but after doing some quick mental math while I was doing it, I realized it's really not going to cover that much space just because of how little space I'm taking it from and how much I'm putting on. So the key takeaway for this is sometimes you just gotta be a little resourceful and creative in how you use the resources on your farm. The other thing is, it's a learning experience. I made a huge mistake by putting the beds in the wrong spot, and now I'm having to deal with moving them. So you learn from your mistakes, you move on, and you can see how effective these chickens are. And The key here is having the right density, and there's never a perfect answer. It depends on the job, but more chickens in a smaller area will get the job done faster. It's kind of simple like that. So we'll let them work this for a while. I'll move the coop over and collapse the other side of the fence and fill that up and open it back up for them. Got as much soil as I could in here, and now the chickens are doing what I call the left, right, right. You can see them getting to work. I'm gonna give them a few days here to sort of spread things out and break things down a little bit. Now, before the first season we farmed, so 2 winters ago, I actually set the chickens up in an area and camped them out there for a couple months, and after they really ate everything and broke everything down, I added a bunch of wood chips and gave them a little bit more time. And that way they sort of scratched and pooped and turned that manure and wood chips into sort of compost, and you could use another carbon source like leaves or something like that. So there's a lot of ways around this, but if you do keep the chickens in one area for a long time, just make sure you move the coop around every day or two, because there's going to be a heavy manure load right underneath the coop, and you really want to spread that out. So I just want to have another disclaimer here. I use the word no-till to describe our farming techniques here, and there's a lot of discussion about, is a broad fork tilling or whatever. I don't own a rototiller because I don't really use one on a regular basis, or actually never use one on a regular basis. But if I did have one, I would probably rototill this just to get the ground started and broken and sort of smoothed out really nicely. But I don't feel it need to buy one because I'm only going to use it at the beginning to shape beds, and I've just been using the chickens. So we're going to give these guys a couple days on here, and we'll come back and move them out here and then use a rake to smooth it out, and we can start building beds. All right, so I just want to show you what kind of soil we're working with here. We have a super heavy clay. It's this red clay you get in the south here, and the chickens have been on here for a little while, and this is after I spread all that soil over there. But if you see here, this is what I'm working with, and you can see that it's just pretty much solid clay. So we don't really rely on our soil very much for growing. We're kind of add our compost on top and start growing into that, and by broad forking and adding more compost, it'll incorporate into the soil over time. So we're just not relying on the soil that we have really here. We're going to try to build on top of it. All right, so here's how we get the beds all marked out. We run a string line down to the end, and then we use these. These are 12-inch wooden stakes I got from Home Depot or Lowe's, and we pound them in the ground. Now, people ask me all the time about our width, so let me just explain that real quick. We do a 30-inch wide bed, which is really standard in the market garden world, and then we have chosen to do a 14-inch walkway, and there's a few reasons for that. One of which is we're on a little bit of a slope, so I like to have a little bit more room. I think you'd be fine with 12 inches on a flatter area, and some people go as wide as maybe 18 inches, which would be really luxurious, but it may not be necessary for this kind of farming. Anyways, we got these all marked out, and continue to get closer and closer to the beds being ready. Hey, so one additional point about marking out the beds: take your time with this, get everything straight, measure everything a bunch of times. You don't want to have to move things around afterwards. It's really hard, and it's really nice when things look straight. It makes it look really, really pleasant and just easy to work with. So take your time with this. And the other point I want to make is we do leave those wooden stakes in the ground. That way, every time we need to flip a bed or do any work, we know where the beds are supposed to be. They tend to drift over time, so keep those in the ground and you'll always know where the beds are supposed to be. And yes, this hat is ridiculous, but you know what? It's sunny out here and I like to keep the sun off of me, so there you go. Got this all raked out. I think it's looking fantastic. Now, I did use some of that old soil here, and I said that we're really trying to build on top of our soil because it's in really bad shape and we really don't want to till it. So if you have soil that's you just don't want to deal with and that you want to rely on, feel free to add, I don't know, topsoil or compost would be awesome, but it's more expensive, and we're going to build our beds out of compost. So you got to use what makes sense in your context. This is just what we have around and what sort of makes sense at the time. We are going to put down some gypsum, and that will be to try to loosen up that clay soil that's underneath, and over time it will improve and get better. Gypsum's a cool product. It's used in a lot of different things. As a former brewer, I used to use it all the time to manipulate the water chemistry while making beer. Your drywall is made out of gypsum, so and we're going to use a pelleted version here to help improve the soil and break up that clay. Overall, really happy with the way this looks. It came up pretty even. There's a little bit of organic matter here that's going to just sort of help in the overall beds. So using those stakes that we put in the ground earlier, I'm using some mason string, or what's called mason twine, and just string up your beds. This is just an awesome way to keep your beds nice and straight when you're building them and really have a professional look, and also just allow you ease of transplanting and cultivating and everything else, and seeding, everything else later on. These are permanent beds, so we want to make sure that we get them nice and straight. You don't need to do all of them at once. You can start with a couple. When you get those done, you can move them down. I just had all these strings cut, so I laid out a bunch at once, but you could get started with 4 or 5 and just move them down as you go. So next step is we're going to start bringing in compost, and I'm going to do 5 wheelbarrows per 50-foot bed, and then we'll do wood chips and keep moving on from there. All right, got 4 beds laid out with compost. So as I said, 5 wheelbarrows. I have so much trouble with that word. I don't know why. My wife makes fun of me all the time. Wheelbarrows, not wheelbarrels. Anyways, you can see here 4 beds laid out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to rake it and then use the tilther just to make it nice and level. Tilther's totally not necessary. Just have the tool. You could definitely get the same effect with a rake and a little more patience. So I'm going to get that done before I put wood chips in the walkways. Hey, so I got all those 6 beds done. I had to push into the evening quite a bit, but I had to get it done. So we're losing daylight here, so I just wanted to make sure I captured this for you guys. You can see the 6 beds out here, and we got wood chips and all the walkways. I'm not really going to talk about wood chips because I'm going to make a whole other video on that, because there's a bunch of information to talk about in there. I'll also make another video about how I take it from this step onto planting for the first time. Notice I did not use a broad fork yet, and I will. So after this point, I will broad fork, add some amendments, use the tilther and a rake, and then either direct seed or transplant into these beds. The only thing left I have to do to get these guys ready, besides those things, is put a little bit more, put some wood chips in the walkway here, and then around the outside as well. But otherwise, we're good to go. This is a big push today. I really needed to get this done. This is sort of the last big push for our expansion for this season. Got a couple other beds I need to redo up top, but overall, we're in good shape. And just want to say thanks for watching. Please like and share this video with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. It's a really new channel. I really want to try to reach out to as many people as possible. Hope you enjoy the content today, and we'll see you in the next one. I wonder if I'd probably just speak louder. Let me go up there and do it again. Gotta have some comedic relief, right? I hope I'm in the shot. I can't really see. No, it's facing me. Yeah, so this is where I'm filming from. All right.